Well, hello, my name is John Watts, and I want to welcome you to our video. This will be questions that have been submitted to us related to consumer issues. My name is John Watts. I'm a consumer protection attorney in Alabama, and we try to do these every Friday. Today is August the 14th. So if you would like to have your questions answered next week on the 21st, you can either put it as a comment below this video, or you can go to our main consumer website, alabamaconsumer.com, and leave us a question there. Or you can even call us, 205-879-2447. Ask to speak to Carolyn and let her know that you have a question that you would like to be answered. So we've got about 5 questions. And the first one is, what do I do if Nationstar is showing up on my credit report, but I don't have a mortgage in my name? It's in my spouse's name only. So this is something that we see quite often. And it is when a mortgage company, and specifically this is Nationstar, it happens to other companies as well, where they will get a loan and then they start collecting against you. But the problem is the loan's not in your name. So, and I'll use myself as an example. So if my wife is the only one on the note, and just make sure we're clear on the terms, the note is the debt, and then that is tied to the dirt or to the property by the mortgage. Now we say, I need to make my mortgage payment. If we were being technically correct, we'd say I need to make my note payment. But let's assume that only my wife is on the note. I'm not on the note at all. But suddenly on my credit report, Nationstar is reporting. And maybe there are collection letters from Nationstar saying, hey, John, you owe this debt. But see, I don't owe the debt. So what do? Well, normally when a company like Nationstar gets the debt, so let's represent it with this piece of paper. The question is, was that loan in default when Nationstar first touched it? The answer is almost always yes. Well, if that's true, then Nationstar is a debt collector, and they're subject to the FDCPA, Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So what does that law provide? What does it give to you? Well, it tells debt collectors like Nationstar, you better not lie. You better not do anything unfair or harassing. Well, let's think about that. If I'm not even on the note and I don't owe any money, then if Nationstar is saying I owe the money, that's a lie. That's unfair. Certainly the note, the contract does not say, oh, and by the way, you can report this or collect against people who don't owe the debt. Now, of course it doesn't say that. Is that harassing? Well, sure it is. To say to somebody who owes nothing, to say to them, you owe this money, I'm going to destroy your credit report, I'm going to send you harassing letters, I'm going to make harassing phone calls. Well, I don't know how else you would describe it. So what's the solution? Well, there's a couple ways to do it. One, you can dispute through the credit bureaus. Because a lot of times a company like Nationstar will not remove this from your credit report. But if you go directly to the credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, sometimes they will, even if Nationstar doesn't want them to. Although usually they'll do whatever Nationstar tells them to do. The other approach is to say, you know what, we're just going to sue Nationstar under the FDCPA because that prohibits false credit reporting, prohibits false debt collection and harassing, unfair, all those things that when you're collecting against somebody who doesn't owe anything, then I don't know how else you would describe it other than to say it's harassing, it's unfair, it's deceptive. So that is usually the best approach because once you sue these companies like a Nationstar, and there's plenty of others that do it as well, but our question is on Nationstar, they tend to suddenly go, oh, wait, we're going to fix this problem and we'll leave you alone. We'll take care of your credit reporting. And now how much do we need to pay you? But if you just call them, if you just write them letters, a lot of times they're like, no, that's not going to do it. We're not going to make a change. But when you sue them and they get that lawsuit in their hands, suddenly now they're very interested to at least try to make things right. And the question is, will they pay the right amount of money? Because this is illegal what they're doing. and there's a price that has to be paid for that illegal conduct. So if you're dealing with Nationstar, Aquin, Celine, SLS, Bank of America, whoever the company is, and they are reporting on your credit report, and they're coming after you for a loan that you're not even on, then you need to take some very serious and usually immediate action to make sure that that gets fixed now, but also in the future, that that company will remember, oh yeah, do not do false credit reporting on the spouse who doesn't owe anything. So that's usually the right solution. Okay, our next question is it legal to garnish a person's paycheck without first notifying that person that they owe the money? So a couple things about that question I'm not 100% clear on, but I think what the person's asking is, should I be notified or should I be served with a lawsuit before there can be a garnishment? And the answer to that is yes. You have to be served before a judgment is valid. Now, if you were served, and let's say there's a judgment in 2010, and now all this time goes by and it's 2015, and now suddenly you get garnished. Do you have to be told here in 2015 that, hey, we're about to garnish you? Well, it's a little unclear. I think technically you should be. A lot of times, though, you may have moved, and they definitely notify your employer before they garnish you. And that's usually how you find out. You get a memo or a phone call from HR saying, hey, look, we got this garnishment notice in. So the thing that we look at, and we get a lot of calls about this, is, were you served? If you were served and you just didn't show up, or you lost at trial, then, you know, there are consequences to that, and they can garnish your wages, assuming they follow the laws on garnishment. But if you were never served, now that's a completely different matter. There doesn't need to be a garnishment if you were never served. And we have other videos we talk about what's being served. So sometimes people get upset because, again, they had the judgment way back here, 5, 6, 7 years goes by, and that may double that judgment just with interest. And now suddenly this collector or collection law firm shows up and they're wanting to garnish your wages. And that's a problem. It's a real challenge for folks. And so, you know, then you start looking at, can I settle this? What about bankruptcy? Very extreme option, usually not appropriate, but occasionally it's appropriate. You know, what can I do? A lot of times settlements, the way to try to go, maybe you can do a monthly payment to them. Maybe you can get your hands on a lump sum and you can settle it that way. But you definitely need to figure out what are your options if you're in that situation. Okay. Next question is, what if I pay a medical bill, but then a debt collector like Tri-State Adjustments, that's a debt collector out of Wisconsin, I believe, trashes my credit report? Well, what do I do then? Well, so let's set the stage. So you have medical treatment, and then you pay that bill, and then after you pay the bill, this debt collector appears. And there's all these different types of medical debt collection companies. Tri-State's just one that they happen to deal a lot with St. Vincent's and Birmingham and surrounding areas. And they have other accounts as well. What do you do? Well, let's kind of walk through that. So I incurred the bill, so I owe the debt, but then I pay the debt. And then after I pay the debt, this debt collector, Tri-State in this situation, pops up. Well, when they pop up, do I owe the debt? Well, no. Remember, I incurred the debt. I paid it. So what are they collecting? Well, they're collecting nothing. And what happens is sometimes they don't communicate very well with the hospital or the medical provider. And so Tri-State says, well, wait a minute, we didn't know that you had paid it. Okay, I paid it. Now you know. But what we see is, have the bill, pay it, Tri-State appears, you tell them, I already paid it, and then they put it on your credit report as a collection account. I mean, isn't that amazing that you've already paid the bill before Tri-State gets the bill? it's already been paid. And then they go, you know what? We're going to stick it on your credit report. Now, maybe they'll show it as being a zero balance that's been paid, but it's false. That's just wrong to put a paid bill on somebody's credit report as a collection account when it was paid before the collector ever touched it. So we go through the FDCPA, Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Is it false? Absolutely. It's a complete lie. Is it unfair? Yeah. I mean, can a collector just go along and go, oh, well, you know, 5 years ago you paid this bill, so we're going to stick it on your credit report. Well, what's the difference between that and 5 months ago or 5 weeks ago? If it's paid before it gets to the collector has no business putting that on your credit report. It's an absolute lie. So is it a lie? Yes. Is it unfair? Yeah. I mean, what are they just going to start? Take our mortgage example. Every month you make your mortgage or your note payment on your house, and then a collector comes along and says, we're going to report you every single month. Now, we'll show it as being paid, but we're going to show it as a collection account. You're like, I've never been late. You can't do that. That is so unfair. That's what these medical collection agencies do. So is it a lie? Is it unfair? Is it harassing? Yeah. I mean, because here's the purpose of this. So we all know you have medical procedure. It's a nightmare getting the billing straight. Do you get double billed? Do they forget to bill your insurance? Sometimes we've seen medical providers wait 2 years before they send a bill. Well, that's not my fault that they waited 2 years to send me a bill. And so it's very confusing. And then all of a sudden you get this letter or they show up on your credit report from Tri-State. And you're like, what is this? But you know what? If you realize that Tri-State always credit reports, if they have created this impression in the marketplace that, you know what, you get a letter from us, Tri-State, we are going to be on your credit report, then you might go, you know, I think I paid this, but I'm not taking a chance. I'll go ahead and pay Tri-State because it's only $50, right? It's $100. Well, that's what they're trying to do, in my opinion, is create this impression in the marketplace that, you know what, we will credit report, we will come after you. And so that explains why, even though you got the bill, even though you paid it, and then it goes to Tri-State, they'll still be on your credit report because they want to create that impression in the marketplace. This is what these medical debt collectors do, that, you know what, don't mess with us because we will come after you on your credit report. Now, they would just absolutely disagree with that and say, we absolutely don't do that. If we know a debt's been paid before we get it, we would never put it on a credit report. Well, then I would ask them the simple question, because we have a case just like this where we told them we paid it, and they go, oh, okay, we won't bother you. And then they put it on our credit report after that. They don't put that it's disputed. Obviously, we dispute it being with a debt collector, and it shouldn't be on there in the first place. So what's the explanation? Well, the typical industry explanation is it's all just an accident. It's a simple mistake. We weren't really trying to collect anything. Really? Well, that's something they can prove in front of a jury. And so if you deal with medical collection, you got to check that stuff very quickly, because so many times either you never got the bill in the first place and it just goes straight to a collector. Well, how's it late if you never had a bill? Or you got the bill, you paid it, and then it goes to a collector, or then 6 months later, a collector pops up on your credit report. You've got to monitor this very carefully with medical bills. And if you've got a medical debt collector out there that's violating the law, then look at your options in suing them under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, under Alabama state law. Because once they realize that, and this is what we said in a closing argument a few years ago in federal court, when these debt collectors realize that there will be full and fair compensation for Alabama consumers. So you break the law, the FDCPA, and a jury awards a full and fair amount of compensation. That sends a message to these debt collectors, say, whoa, you know what? We need to be very careful in Alabama, because if we break the law, people will be compensated. Now, they don't like that. They want to be able to break the law for 100 people and one person will sue, And then they say, well, you should barely get any money. Well, why? No, we want full, fair compensation for somebody. And when debt collectors, whether it's medical collectors, credit card collectors, doesn't matter what type of collector, when they know there will be full and fair compensation in Alabama courts, they go, whoa, let's be careful in Alabama. Now, we may be reckless in Georgia or Mississippi or somewhere else, but let's not do this in Alabama because there will be a heavy price to be paid. Okay, so our next question is, if portfolio recovery is collecting a debt I don't owe, how do I stop them from collecting when I've been dealing with collector after collector on the same bogus debt? Now, you can substitute any debt collector, and portfolio recovery is just a big one. We've sued them, I don't know, dozens and dozens of times in Alabama federal court. So what do? You get this letter, and it says you owe $1,000 on some debt. And you go, I never owed that debt. And I told this collector and that collector and this other collector and this other collector, I don't owe this debt. And you've told the original creditor, or these collectors have told the original creditor, you don't owe the debt. Maybe it's identity theft. Maybe you paid it off, whatever it is, but it just keeps coming over and over and over. If you have kids, you probably have been to Chuck E. Cheese. And there's that game, I think it's called whack-a-mole. You get the little stick, and there are all these little holes there. And this mole pops up, and you whack it. You're like, I won. Oh, wait, it pops up over here. So you whack that one. Oh, it pops up over here. That's what these debt collectors are like. They'll come after you for bogus debt, and you go, hey, leave me alone, stop. They go, well, send me this, send me that. You send them all this stuff. They go, okay. And they just send it to the next one, where they send it back to the original creditor and say, hey, consumer says it's bogus. And they send it out to another debt collector. Now, you think a debt collector gets an account, they would say to the original creditor, hey, has anybody said this is not a valid account? They don't do that. It's kind of like, but see no evil, hear no evil. Like, I don't want to know. That's how the debt collectors are. So when they get it, they want to be able to say, well, I thought it was a legitimate debt. Well, did you ask? Did you go back to the original creditor and say, it's kind of funny. This has been through 13 debt collectors. Is there a problem with the account? Particularly when you're collecting against somebody who has perfect credit. And they know, they pull credit reports. They go, that's strange. This account's been in all these different debt collectors. The guy we're collecting has never been late in his life. Oh, you know what? I think it's a valid debt. That's their mentality. So what do you do about that? You can write them a letter. Maybe it'll stop. Of course, it may be more of that whack-a-mole where then it pops up somewhere else. They'll just sell it or transfer it to somebody else. So you can write them. You can call them. A lot of times the best solution is you sue a company like Portfolio. And you say, hey, guys, I don't owe this debt. I don't owe this debt. And leave me alone. Because when you sue them, that tends to get their attention. They go, oh, okay, yeah, let's see. We don't want to collect this debt anymore. We want to get this off your credit report, and we want to just bury this in the basement of our building, and it'll never come back to life. Because, see, if you sue them, and they know now, particularly since you sued them, really they knew before, but they know now you don't owe this debt, and then they transfer it to somebody else, well, then we sue Portfolio again and sue the new debt collector again, because it's illegal to collect a debt you do not owe. And this is what in law we call strict liability. It's just, are you collecting a debt I do not owe? If the answer is yes, then you are strictly liable for that. Now, the debt collectors have some legal arguments and defenses. They try to prove, oh, it was just a complete accident. We have all these elaborate procedures in place to make sure this never happens. Okay, well, if they can properly prove that, then they may not owe any money. Very difficult for them to prove it because they intentionally don't have good procedures in place, so that they have this sort of alibi, if you will. So again, it's like, see no evil, hear no evil, so that we can collect against anybody. And then when they complain about it, we go, oh, wait, I'm totally innocent. Nah, I've been doing this a long time, and I have never seen a situation where they truly could prove that. So again, every situation is different. Check with a lawyer, but it may be your best interest is to go ahead and sue Portfolio just to finally bring this thing to a halt. All right, I think we've got one more. I filed bankruptcy and either could not or did not reaffirm my mortgage. Will I get kicked out? Do I still owe the debt? All right, so here's the deal. You have a mortgage, you filed bankruptcy, and I assume that they mean Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And once you get to the end of that bankruptcy, it wipes out all your debt. There's a few exceptions, but mortgages, mortgage notes, loans, debts would be wiped out. So there's something called reaffirmation. It just means to affirm or to agree, and the means to do it again. So it's an agreement again that you are responsible for this debt. So even though you got this debt, could be a credit card, car loan, mortgage loan, even though it really would be just torn up, if you reaffirm it, then after your bankruptcy, you're still on the hook for that loan. Now, we're not getting into why you should or shouldn't do that, but sometimes the consumer doesn't do it. Sometimes the mortgage company says, oh no, we won't reaffirm it. So where does that leave you? Well, to some extent, it puts you in this kind of no man's land, because once that you got that debt, you file bankruptcy, you get to the discharge, here's what happens. It just gets torn up. It doesn't exist anymore. They can never come after you for that debt. If they do, they violate the law and you sue them. Okay. So what happens to the house? Because you don't owe any more money on your house. Well, does that mean you get your house for free? No. And we get these calls. Somebody go, hey, I didn't reaffirm on a $500,000 house, so I want my house for free. No, you don't get it for free. That mortgage company, even though the debt has been torn up, so we've got the debt and we've got the land, okay? The mortgage ties the debt to the dirt. So the debt goes away. But that mortgage, that security interest in the property is still there. So they come get the property. How do they do that? They foreclose. So what happens as a practical matter? Normally, if you make your payments, and this can make your head hurt, if you make your payments on a debt you do not owe, think about that for a second. Because remember, it's just been shredded. You don't owe it anymore. But if you make payments on that, they won't foreclose. Normally, they won't foreclose. So what happens? A year goes by, 2 years goes by. What's it being reported on your credit report? Well, it won't be reported other than that the debt has been discharged, because you don't owe a debt. So they're not going to report every month that you're making payments on this debt that's been shredded. It's been discharged. So can they foreclose? Well, again, normally if you make your payments, they're not going to foreclose. Well, can you get loss mitigation? Yeah, you can. Maybe you can do a loan modification. Getting into all the exceptions to the exceptions. Definitely get with your bankruptcy lawyer about this. And a lot of times bankruptcy lawyers say, hey, John, will you please talk with this client, because we need somebody to explain to them what situation they're in. Because maybe it's years have gone by, you've been making all your payments, now you want to sell your house, buy a new one. Well, how do you do that? How do you sell? How do you get a payoff on the loan? It gets very complicated. So again, I'm not saying whether you should reaffirm, should not reaffirm. There's advantages, disadvantages, but hopefully that answers the question about will I get kicked out of my house? Well, only if they foreclose, and they normally will not foreclose if you're making your payments. So hope that these answers to the questions have been helpful. Certainly be glad to put your question on our next show. You can just put a comment below this video or go to alabamaconsumer.com. There's a little contact us button. You can ask us a question and just let us know. Generally people are contacting us through there, want us to call them, and they're asking a question because they say, hey, I live in Alabama and I need some help here. But if all you want is it answered on the webinar, you can certainly tell us that. And even call us 205-879-2447, ask for Carolyn. And if you do live in Alabama and you want to speak with us directly, not just have a question answered online, but want to speak with us directly, set up a consultation, you can do that as well through alabamaconsumer.com or calling 205-879-2447. So appreciate your questions. I'll look forward to chatting with you next week and hope you have a great day. Okay, bye-bye.